Memory is a very interesting thing because nobody really remembers anything exactly the same. And I bet you people don't even remember things exactly how they happened. I mean, sure, if you talk to a sibling, you may intersect or meet at certain things that, yes, we know this definitely happened and definitely happened this way. But in other cases, you might remember things completely different. For example, my mom and my aunt. There's things my mom says happened and my aunt says that never happened, and vice versa. Aunt says these things happened and my mom says they never happened. But it does raise a question sometimes as to, do we create the memories that we want, or do we remember things the way we want to remember them, how we wish things had gone? Okay, that was starting to get a little deep, but that's not the point of this video. The reason I bring up memory is because I thought it would be really, really simple to talk about Spider-Man and why I love this character so much. But as I dug into it and really started to think about it, sure, I could remember certain things. I remember where I was when I read the first comic. I remember villains from the first comics that I read. I can even remember the reason I read my first comic. But the truth is, the more I think about it, I'm like, well, why did I really get into this character? What made me fall in love with him? Why do I still stick around? Is it just nostalgia, or is there something deeper about this character that I love? It's kind of like that type of feeling where you've known somebody for years, but you can't really remember when you met them, or you remember stuff about when you met them, but you don't know what it was that really brought you together as friends. For example, my buddy Cletus, he knows exactly where we were, how we met. At least he says he does. And I go along with it. I mean, I won't say it here because I can't remember what he says. He tells me it a million times. Another problem with memory. But for me, I honestly really can't. And that's why I go along with what he says. Because, hey, what he says is not a bad idea. It's not a bad memory. So let's go with that one. Or one of my dad's friends that I go canoeing with from time to time. I mean, kayaking. No, we've done both. But I can remember why I met him, the circumstances, but I don't really recall where it kind of went from, oh, yeah, he's just a friend of my dad's, to, okay, now I like hanging out with him myself. I don't know where that happened. And it was the same way with Spider-Man. So today, I want to take a look back at why I love this character so much. Why I did, why I do now. Is it nostalgia? Or is there something about this character that I've grown with as the character has grown? Is there some deeper meaning to why he stuck around and why he is my favorite superhero of all times? I mean, like the shirt says, I like Spider-Man. If you don't like Spider-Man, then you may not like me, and I'm perfectly okay with that. Or something like that. So, welcome to the Spider's Web. And another installment for the year of the Street Rat and the Spider. This is why I love Spider-Man.
One jump ahead of the breadline, one swing ahead of the sword. I steal only what I can afford. That's everything. One jump ahead of the lawman. That's all, and that's no joke. These guys don't appreciate I'm broke.
Riff-raff! Street rat! Scoundrel! Take that!
Just a little snack, guys.
Before even talking about how great Spider-Man is and why I love him, it's important, I think, to look back at my introduction to comics and superheroes in the first place. Now, honestly, I couldn't tell you the very first time I ever read a comic book or ever saw a superhero, but I'm guessing it probably was in one of those magazine turn stalls that they had at Giant Eagle or Supermarket back in the day. I know they don't really anymore, but kids, ask your parents, they'll remember. But where did I really first get interested in these characters and this world? Well, I was probably about 9 years old, I look back, and that's when Batman and Robin came out. And I know that was the first superhero movie I saw. I know that was the first Batman movie I saw for sure. And that's why I love that film so much, even though it's cheesy. So that was my introduction into at least the world of superheroes, as far as I can recall. Then X-Men came out a couple years later when I was 12 years old. And I remember watching that movie and I loved it. Now, I'll be honest. I can't actually remember what I did before that. I'm guessing that I had watched X-Men the Animated Series and gotten into X-Men to a certain degree, and that's why I saw the movie. And I think by that point I was into Spider-Man as well. But one thing I know for sure is where I was when I read my first comic, why I decided to read that first comic, whose comic it was, and I can even remember the villains in those first couple comics that I read. I recall that Spider-Man was all over the place. He was the face of Marvel in the 90s. He was everywhere. And just like years later, I would do the same thing for Harry Potter. I said to myself, who is this character? Why does everybody love him? I mean, what's the big deal about this guy? I need to know something. I need to know why this is such a huge deal to so many people. Hey, Dad, or hey, Mom, anybody got any books about Spider-Man, comic books? Hey, Mom, can we go read the Harry Potter books? They were both the same type of things. Well, I didn't have any comic books at the house, but my dad had some old Spider-Man comics and some Fantastic Four and some Daredevil and some other things, which is why to this day, regardless of what he says, I blame him for part of my love of comic books and superheroes, regardless of what he says. Another point in memory where people will say one thing and somebody will say something else. Anyway, so we went to my grandmother's house and I found my dad's old comic books. I pulled them down off the shelf. Okay, here's Fantastic Four. Who cares? I don't know. Daredevil. Okay, here's who I'm looking for. Spider-Man. Pulled him out and I started reading. I didn't realize at the time, because I had no idea this concept of counting issues, like, okay, there's a story arc here, so that's how we're going to follow it. And then it's like, okay, this month it was issue 69, then it was 70. I have no idea what it really was. I could look, but I really didn't understand that, or I didn't have a concept of that at the time, because I was brand new to it. I knew counting, but I just didn't know how comic books worked, really. But I can remember so clearly what the stories were, because Spidey had broken his arm, so he was fighting people with a broken arm, and he got captured a couple times. He almost got killed. And then, of course, we have the famous Spider-Man No More story as well. I can't remember exactly the arc that they went through. I think the Spider-Man No More was somewhere in the middle. But in these comics, I got introduced not just to Spider-Man and other players like Aunt May, Mary Jane. I think it was just MJ at the time that I got really introduced to. Maybe Betty Brant. Jameson. Yes, I definitely got introduced to Jameson because one of the stories was a Spidey Jameson-centric story. But I got introduced to the Lizard, to the Shocker, to Kingpin, Vulture, Kraven. And no, there was a Rhino one later on, I remember. But these were the first villains. These were the first Spider-Man characters that I got introduced to. And they're the ones that I remember. Which is why Shocker is one of my favorite Spider-Man villains of all time. I think he's very underappreciated. He's in my top 5. But, getting off topic, that's another video. But that's why I really love the Shocker. So, that's why I at least looked into the character. Why I decided I gotta see what this is about. And I loved the character from then on. At a younger age, I think it really was more just he was cool. The powers were cool. They were different. Sure, he had the super strength like a lot of heroes. Sure, he had the agility like other heroes did. But there was no other heroes that I really knew of that could shoot webs. I didn't realize necessarily at the time the mechanical and all that stuff about it. The Spidey sense, no other hero had that. Wall crawling was awesome. Just the thrill. He was a jokester. He had so much fun with this, and I was like, I want that. I want to have fun. I want all these abilities, and I want to have fun with them. Which, when I finally learned the origin story, it definitely warns you against having fun with these powers. And that was something that I appreciated when I got older. But just as a young kid, just getting started with comics and learning about these characters in the midst of the 90s when they were still popular, but starting off with, the golden age, I think it was, or the silver age. Who wants to take a piece of my nerd card? Because I always get those two mixed up. But it was because I read those comics that those are the type of stories I love. I love the classic Spider-Man. I love the classic look. I mean, the webbing on the arms, that's cool. I don't need that, but it's cool. The classic look for the villains, classic villains themselves. I'm not really into these newer villains. They don't always work for me. I mean, sometimes they do, but no, give me the classics, like the ones I mentioned, or Doc Ock, Green Goblin, Hobgoblin, Venom. Yes, I know Venom came later, but there's reasons to me that he's a classic. Give me these characters. These are the ones that I love. These are the ones that I'm always interested in and I get invested in. And honestly, I thought Spider-Man had one of the coolest rogues galleries, and I still do to this day. I don't care what anybody says. Sure, Batman has a great one with all the psychological different types of villains and creatures and even monsters he's fought. I don't care. I love Spidey's Rogue Gallery, and I will always love it. And I will always say it's a unique one. It's neat that a lot of them are animal related, which Dum Dum here didn't really put the two of them together until years later. But Spidey's just always been the colorful, playful, enjoys life type of character, and that was what I wanted. But then there was the Peter Parker side to him. The secret identity. The kid that was bullied. The one that couldn't get a girl. The one who always just felt like an outcast. That was me. That was me back in the day. I mean, yeah, even to a certain degree, I am from time to time now, though I've grown into going out and being able to talk with people more easily. Not as much as some people I know, but I'm more outgoing, a lot more outgoing than I was back then. So I could relate to that. How about science? Yeah, I liked science for the most part, but I wasn't a genius like Peter Parker is. I'm still not. I wish I was. But it was the outsider, the one man against everything. It was the fun aspect here, and like I said, just the loner. But I also kind of liked being alone at times because you could get more stuff done, and I just learned to appreciate it. And I think for a long time there, Spidey did too. I think, yeah, as Peter Parker, he wanted to have friends and girlfriends and stuff. But I think there was a part of him, as he said later on, he's like, I love being Spider-Man. It's something I can't get away from. Again, I don't know if those are his exact words, but I know he said things similar to that in the comic book history. And I can't disagree with him. There's a lot about his character, especially back in the beginning, that just felt like I could relate to him growing up. That's why I loved him. I mean, his costume also. I love the costume. The costume was neat. Felt unique. It didn't feel like, oh, here's my symbol, I'm Batman, or here's my symbol, I'm Superman. I felt like Spider-Man's really popped more than the other superheroes that I came to learn about or came to enjoy. And if it hasn't become clear, to me, Peter Parker was just an ordinary guy, which is something all the Marvel characters to me felt like. That's one of the reasons I love Marvel more than I do DC. Because Marvel just always felt real to a certain degree. It felt like these characters, these personalities existed. It felt like the only thing separating them from our world that we lived in were the superpowers, the super fights, the super villains, and we could relate to them. Maybe not all their issues, maybe not all their problems, or in Iron Man's case, couldn't relate to him being a billionaire, but there was always something about them that felt real. Something about them that just made you love these characters. And for me, I wanted to learn more about them, to the degree that now I know people think I just sit around and study Marvel books all the time and do all this research on these characters. While I won't disagree, I've done that. That's not, I just happen to learn things. I just know things. It's not like I sit here in my nerd room day after day reading every little detail about comic book history that I can get my hands on. But, that being said, as a kid, Spider-Man was just cool. He was fun. I could relate to him. And I just loved the character. And then we got this 90s animated show that I got into, and I love that show so much. It's my favorite show from the 90s. I love it more than X-Men the animated series. I don't care what anybody says. And I even remember where I started with that episode. Like, I remember the exact episode that I watched. I have so many fond memories of that show. So I've talked about when I was younger, and okay, admittedly, still, I get excited talking about this. I love talking about this character. I just love putting all this out there. And yes, a lot of that stuff I still love about the character. But growing up, going through the teenager years, going through the college years, and now becoming an adult, and I don't care what anybody says, you can be an adult and still be a nerd. Things have changed. And I've learned that there's more to Spider-Man as a character than I originally thought. And there's been more and more reasons to love the character. And thinking about this video, really trying to dig into why I love the character now, I realized some of these things are a lot deeper than I expected. People say being an adult, you gotta work hard. You gotta work all day. You're not really allowed to have a lot of fun, except if you have kids, or you're allowed to take a break every now and then when you're on vacation. It just feels stressful. And as a kid, you don't realize that until you grow up and you have your own house to take care of, your own finances to take care of. You don't really realize that. So I think one of the reasons that I have been able to stay attached to Spider-Man as a character so much is just that desire to carry part of my childhood with me, to carry a part of me that is just fun and adores the idea of fantasy and what could be this world that I love, that, it's not real, and I know that, but it's a world of escapism now. Sure, as a kid, it was that, but it's more of that now. Because with all the issues, with all the day-to-day problems, being able to jump into a comic book, or being able to jump into an MCU film, or even one of the classic Tobey Maguire movies, or even the Andrew Garfield movies, and just escape into another world where superpowers are real and you can solve your problems by punching someone, which you shouldn't, but only if they match you blow for blow and they can take it. I mean, I'm not encouraging violence here, but point is, being able to immerse yourself in that world, it just feels good to be able to get away from the problems that we have every day. But that doesn't mean that the stories and the comics don't involve with us. We saw Peter and MJ get married in the comics. We saw them live together. We saw them live in an apartment, then move into a house. And then I think moving to Aunt May's house, and Peter trying to find jobs. And his money problems meant even more now because he had more than just himself to take care of, or him and Aunt May to take care of. And now I can relate to that. Always feeling like I'm working hard, but you never feel like you have quite enough to pay the bills, to do what you want. It always feels like you're just on the edge. The idea of other people depending on you instead of just yourself. Moving from an apartment, which I honestly never thought I would live in an apartment, to a townhouse, and now to my own house with my wife. It's just, it makes you realize just how real or how accurate these Spider-Man stories were. The idea of, you can have all this fun because you can't deny it. And I'm sure Peter wouldn't deny it. No matter how many problems he got into, Spidey was a sense of freedom for him as well. That was his freedom. That was his way to move about the city and just, for a while, maybe be a little carefree until the next issue came up or the next bad guy came and wanted to kill him. But that's what comic books are now for me. They're escapism. But I also see so much more of myself, like I said, in the character of Spider-Man, in the character of Peter Parker himself. Admittedly, I might not always be in the shape that he's in when it comes to money issues, or not that I ever want to talk about stuff like that, but it's just, that's something we all face. We all face paying the rent, or paying the electric bill, or just figuring out where we need to spend our money. And that's something that, you might not see Peter Parker do. I mean, he talks about it at times, trying to find roommates, which I've lived with roommates, so I can understand that. You get frustrated with them at times. Sometimes you just want to strangle them, but other times you're just so grateful that they're there with you, that you're able to, have somebody to share the rent with, for one thing. But then also, as the stories grew, Spidey's friend circle grew, both as Spider-Man and as Peter Parker. As Spider-Man, it grew out to include the other heroes. It included Tony Stark as a very good friend. Mr. Fantastic helped him. But as Peter Parker, he became friends with Harry Osborn, Flash Thompson, Mary Jane Watson, Gwen Stacy, Betty Brant, Liz Allen, list goes on and on. His friend circle expanded as he got up the courage to talk to people more, as he got to experience more aspects of life. And the same thing happened to me. I didn't really talk to many people in middle school. I talked to one or two, but I got up the courage to ask girls to the dance. And yes, I got shot down like he did. I was embarrassed by things like he was. So at that time, that I understood that. But then also the joys of victory, of whether it was getting that grade, that A+ or something that you studied so hard for, or getting that date with that girl that you wanted to go to the dance with. I understood that. And I mean, Peter had to fight a lot of battles as himself to even get together with Gwen in the first place. And as he says in, I believe it's Spider-Man Blue, he says that he thinks learning to love Gwen the way that he did led him to Mary Jane. And, you know, I think maybe something similar happened to me. Just learning to talk to people, learning to understand people. And as my mom says, one of my faults is that I want to please everybody. And I admit that. We all have faults. Peter has faults. Spidey has faults. Everybody in the MCU has faults. And it's just, yeah, being able to connect with a character on that level and understanding why certain things happened, it feels good. And like I was saying, you know, I got turned down many times. There's many stories that I'm not proud of. But the truth is that if those hadn't happened, I probably wouldn't have gotten up the courage to ask my wife out, to live with her, and eventually to propose and now be married. Or maybe I'm stretching, who knows? But I'm going to go with that. And I mean, I've always felt a connection with this character, like I said. I mean, we have the same name, for goodness sakes. I mean, how can a Peter not relate to a Peter? I'm only half kidding about that. That was something I think that as a kid I really liked. I liked the fact that, hey, I've got the same name as a great superhero. I love this character. But, and thinking back, I think there's parts of my personality that, I mean, I've definitely picked up from the comics the idea of great power and great responsibility, which is why I think I don't ever want to make somebody unhappy. I want to make sure everyone's happy that I'm around. I sacrifice my own happiness at times to make them happy, and Spidey does it too. And the more I think about things, the more I realize how similar I am to this character. But there were other things that I started to realize and started to question, like, you know, his Aunt May and his Uncle Ben instilled a very, very good sense of morale, of doing what's right, fighting the good fight. Just, they instilled in him all these good morals, these good attitudes. And the truth is, my parents did the same to me. I don't know how they did it. I don't know why I followed it. I mean, when every other kid would want to rebel, I didn't. I don't know how. I don't know how they managed to do that. But, yeah, Spidey and I both, for the most part, listened to our parents or our guardians, in his case. Though, I know there were some times I didn't, but hey, what kid doesn't? I mean, Peter had to break the rules at times to go be Spider-Man. Now, I'm not saying anything I ever did was worth breaking the rules for or doing something I shouldn't, but it just, you know, it's surprising to me as I'm thinking about it, trying to get all the words out, trying to plan it, this video, just all the things that came to mind. Another big one, as I mentioned about with our friends, you know, his friend circle grew. So did mine. I couldn't talk to a girl to save my life. But then I started having friends that were girls. We hung out at lunch. We talked. We chatted about things. We hung out outside of school. I mean, I had one friend, really, I had one or two friends in elementary school. But it grew. And now I've got a great circle of friends. Sure, I've got some really close ones, and some I don't even talk to, admittedly, anymore. But that's just because of time. But my circle of friends and my circle of acquaintances grew. Spidey's did the exact same thing. I do have one side note I want to mention, and that's MJ, or Mary Jane. I love Mary Jane. She is the one that I always felt Peter should be with, because she was the one that I knew before I knew about Felicia, Gwen Stacy, Betty Brant. She was the one that really stood out, and she's the one that I knew about. But the fact that she wants to be an actress, that she was an actress, I related to that because I wanted to be an actor so badly. I went to school for it. I still want to be an actor. I've been in plenty of plays, but that was how I could relate to MJ. I mean, I could relate to her, I'm sure, on some other levels if I really thought about it, but just the idea that she wanted to be an actress, I wanted to be an actor, I connected with her on that. There's actually a panel, and I remember I gave a copy of this panel to my college director, my college professor, because we were taught the Stanislavski method. And that's it's one of many acting methods. If you're interested, you can look it up. But there was a panel in a Spider-Man comic where MJ is reading this book. She's reciting these statements like a school lesson, I think. And Spidey comes in through the window and he goes, "Hey, MJ, studying that Stanislavski stuff?" And I just found it really funny that something I'm studying in college was in a Spider-Man comic. You know, there are these little things that you love and you feel a connection to. Also, thinking about it now, I feel like I connected because we're both only children. Now, I mean, okay, fine. If you want to go down the route that comics are going now, maybe he has a sister. I don't know. That's confusing. I don't understand if she is his sister or if she isn't. Hopefully sometime they'll rectify that. If they haven't already, which maybe I don't know about that, but to me, he's always been an only child. So I think growing up, I connected with him on that level as well. And now I connect to him because I really like the Clone Saga. I don't care what anybody says about it. Because to me, it was about brothers. And it was about this connection you have that, in their case, they were blood related because they were clones. But it doesn't matter if you had the same experiences growing up or not. You were connected. So Peter has Ben Reilly and he has Kane now. And to me, I've got Cletus. He really does feel like my brother. And that's how I can relate. You know, Cletus feels like my brother, even if we're not related by blood. And I have other friends that have felt that way, like my buddy Andrew. He was that way to me for a long time, and still is to a certain degree. So just having this close-knit group of friends that are family to you, Spidey has that, and I've got that. And I can connect with him on that level as well. Another fun note real quick. As I've mentioned, Peter Parker. My buddy Cletus Cassidy. Superhero serial killer. He's not a serial killer. I'm just going to say that. But we always just kind of have a joke about that. Like, hey, I'm the superhero here. You know, or hey, I get to be the villain. You know, I think everybody, whether you know it or not, you like having your name somewhere in pop culture or somewhere that people know the name. They're like, oh, you know, or I know I do. I think Cletus does too. I'm not sure. But I've gone on and on about why I love this character. I don't really know if I've been able to touch on every point. I don't even know if half of this stuff makes sense. But what it comes down to is basically two simple things. Peter Parker is a very relatable and compelling character. He's somebody that you could meet out on the street. He could be anybody. As Stan Lee once said, he loves the fact he didn't do this intentionally, though I think sometimes he likes to take credit for it, even though I think it would actually be Ditko who came up with the idea of the full mask covering so that anybody could be Spider-Man. So I could be Spider-Man. The girl down the street could be Spider-Man, or in her case, it'd be Spider-Woman. But it could be the same thing. He's just a character that just feels so natural. He feels like you. He feels like he's somebody you know, or there's an aspect of him that is you. Even if you were one of the bad kids and you were the ones bullying us nerds or us kids who didn't have any friends, I bet you there was a part of Spider-Man that you could relate to. Who knows? Maybe it was the punching bad guys in the face you could relate to. But the big thing for me, the thing that I really wanted to talk about, the thing that made me want to do this video, besides just thinking about why I love the character, was something I realized after watching No Way Home many, many times. Okay, I watched it 4 times in theaters, but that was still more than some people. But what No Way Home did for me was it made me really understand why I love Spider-Man, and that was he could do things that I never could. He could be the hero or be the person that I just know I can't be. He's what I aspire to be. And yes, there's other characters like Captain America that I would love to be and I have as a fictional role model. But it's Spider-Man. Because Cap to me, I just want the sense of, I want his strength. I want the sense of loyalty that he has. The admiration that Cap has. There's certain things that I do want. And Cap is great, and he's probably my second favorite comic book character, or at least he's my favorite of the MCU characters besides Spider-Man. But Spidey is the one that's always fighting with his inner demons. Cap doesn't really have any inner demons that we know of. Spidey or Peter Parker is able to do the things that if we were put in the situation, I'm pretty sure we'd do the opposite. The main one here being, and spoilers for No Way Home if you haven't seen that movie already, when Peter goes to kill Green Goblin, when he goes to kill Norman Osborn, yes, Tobey Maguire, Peter Parker jumps in the way. But ultimately, it's Tom Holland's Peter Parker that puts down the glider. And honestly, I don't think, given that situation, if I was in it, I don't think I would have been able to do that. Heck, I wouldn't have jumped in the way of somebody murdering somebody who killed one of my loved ones. I'll be honest, I probably wouldn't. So I think nowadays, that's what I really love about Spider-Man. Knowing that he can do things and not do things that I never could, or I wish I could. I wish I could live up to those sense of responsibility, to that sense of morality that he's got. So I know this video is going a little long, and I apologize for that, but I just love this character, and it's hard for me to really get all my thoughts together when I'm talking about him. Sure, there's nostalgia. There's always going to be nostalgia. I don't care. I love this character from the day I read his first comic that I ever read. I've loved him since the 90s animated show. I've loved him since Tobey Maguire. I've loved him since all his other animated shows. I've loved him since Andrew Garfield. And I've loved him since the MCU. I I've loved him for so many years in the comic books. I don't care what they do with him. There are some things that I don't like, but there's things that all fans don't like. But for the most part, this character's been a part of me, and he's never not going to be. All I have to say is, to any of my future kids who might happen to come across this video, sorry guys, or girls, you're stuck with a dad who loves comic books and who is not giving up the love of Spider-Man, not in a million years. But with all that stuff out of the way, what are your thoughts about Spider-Man? Give me some of your history with the character. If you love this character, what is it about him that you love? Maybe it's something that I didn't think of. Or if for some reason you just hate this character, tell me why, because I'm interested to see why people might not like him. Regardless, don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe. And until the next time, when we talk more about Spider-Man here in the Spider's Web, or until the next Year of the Street Rat and Spider video, remember, read what you love, enjoy what you love, and let's all work for a better fandom. I'll see you next time.